ICI Paints, and Brown & Paulson. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Deshpande. Joining our esteemed panel members on the dais, I'd now like to invite on stage Mr. H. Jayesh, founder partner, Juris Corp. Mr. Jayesh is an advocate, solicitor, diploma holder in business finance, and a chartered financial analyst. The Juris Corp that was founded with the objective of becoming the preferred law firm for a select clientele. He has made Juris Corp the law firm in India for derivatives and complex financial transactions and disputes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Jayesh. And our final speaker for the session, Mr. Mrinal Chandran, Vice President, Clear Waters. Mr. Mrinal joined Clear Waters in 2007 and brings 10 years of professional experience to the role. From 2006 to 2007, he worked at Amarchand Mangaldas. Prior to this, he was also with DSK Legal, formerly Anderson Legal. And Mr. Chandran began his career in 2000 with ARA Law in Mumbai. He's also a recipient of the J.N. Tata Endowment Scholarship and the Dorabji Tata Scholarship. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mrinal Chandran. With that, I now request the moderator and speaker for the session, Mr. Sandeep Aneja, to kindly start the proceedings of the first session.
I think this is an ideal time to go through a pretty interesting topic as to how private equity is going to go through the mess that's been created, at least in the public view, of political corruption, various things that have gone on. What's the role private equity will have to play? What that has in terms of implication, in terms of documentation, how we look at transactions, how we look at exit opportunities, how we look at tax implications of various regulations in the picture. What it has done to India's shining image, what's happened. And to that effect, we have a pretty interesting panel here. My job is to just ask questions, and all the smartness will come from the panelists who will provide information on all aspects of private equity transactions, ranging from the regulatory impact, the tax impacts, practical experience in working through difficult times, building businesses as operators, investors, and comparing India's attractiveness with respect to China, other parts of the emerging economies, etc. So I would like to get started. We possibly have about 45 minutes or so for this panel, just to get back a bit on time. My objective would be to present some questions to the panelists, and after that open the floor to the audience, see if you have any questions. To get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sanjeet, maybe I should turn to you, get things started a little bit. The idea is to understand from you. You've been investing in Asia, not just India, for many years now. You've represented many PE funds like TPG and others. So can you compare and contrast how you would compare India and the business and the ability of doing business in India, particularly private equity transactions, just to figure out why people are still looking at India, what brings India to a higher attractiveness level, and why people may shy from India purely from a tax, regulatory, and legal perspective.
So I think Satyajit really set this up for us very well, in that if you look at it, the fundamental India growth story is there. And actually, as you described, the haves and the have-nots, if you are a private equity investor sitting on the sidelines, this is a wonderful time. This is when you can come in, be really creative, use your contacts in the global markets if there is an FCCB restructuring, and really work with the promoters who are struggling. So I actually think that from a private equity perspective, India is very attractive and is continuing to be more so. The only downside is, of course, the fundamental growth story is there, which
but that was asked of me a little earlier today. You've been on both sides of the fence. on both listed equities and on the private equity side. What's the fundamental difference that you find in the Indian context between the two markets?
Well, the difference can be on very different matters. I think the first difference is the amount of involvement. I think we have to be far more involved in private equity than in the listed space. See, in the listed space, once you invest, first of all, the information that you have when you invest in the listed space is far lower than the quantum of information that you have when you invest in the unlisted space. In the unlisted space, you can have full due diligence. You can know the promoters the management far better. You have access to all information. You have access to agreements which bind the promoters and you also, and yourself also. In the listed space, the knowledge, the information is truly incomplete. And also the process of review is not so intense. I think also there's one very much big difference that, in a lot of my private equity investments, the private equity investments that I have maybe are 15% of my wealth, but they're 85% of my time. Because, you get emotionally involved. When you interact with humans, primarily my partners, they are all young entrepreneurs. For example, Neeraj. So, then the level of involvement and intensity and review, I think, is far larger in the private equity space. Also, I feel the risk element is also much higher. But I think if you do well, then the returns are also much higher. So I think each has its own pluses and minuses.
One of the problems that I found when, as Oppenheimer, we started the first private equity fund in India back in '94, we raised $145 million, but in 1994, we didn't know where to put $145 million. The deal flow was limited. You didn't have entrepreneurs, you didn't have promoters who understood what private equity was. They thought they were just getting free money thrown into the companies. How is that evolving now? Are you getting the right kind of deal flow for private equity? Is it still young entrepreneurs who don't understand what it takes to be responsible for your money?
Well, I would like to make an entrepreneur's museum in my life. Because they all come on all shapes, sizes, emotions. I think who's an entrepreneur? He's a crazy guy who wants to do what the world tells him is not possible. Right? And I respect all of them. And I tell every entrepreneur that I am but a transient investor. Right? I mean, it is your emotions, your company, your identity. I am a friend, I'm in no hurry. I have come here